Hey guys, welcome back. This video is going to be about making evergreen trees. As you can see, I'm out at the joint line today. I've got the Larkspur Bridge behind me, and for my Larkspur Bridge project on my layout, I need a bunch of evergreen trees. And I already made a bunch back when I was doing Palmer Lake, but I never actually took the opportunity to show you guys the technique I use to make my evergreen trees. And so I was going to go ahead and do that in this video. Okay, so if you're going to do this technique, one of the things you're going to need is a couple of paper sacks, some ground foam of whatever color you like. Especially use the coarse ground foam, don't use fine. The coarse or at least medium works good. I'm actually going to use this super leaf material for the example today. I kind of like it, but you can use any type of ground foam, whatever color you like. You need some spray adhesive, a small drill, some various size dowels of whatever size tree trunk you want to make. You can cut these to anywhere from 6 inches to a foot in length, depending on the size tree that you want to make. You need some small nails or tacks. In this case, I used number 17 nails. And then you need some filter material, and this is for like furnace filters. And this is the older style where it's actually a fibrous material. It's not cotton or anything like that. It actually is a bunch of fibers that are glued together. This happens to be green. It could be brown or any color you want. If it's a white color or something, you'll need to paint it, which I don't do in this step. But first thing you need to do is take your dowels and whittle them down. So I'll show you how I do that here. I actually use a belt sander, and this one's designed to actually be mounted upside down. And so I went ahead and clamped it to the workstation, and then just ground the dowel rods down to a point to get the shape of the tree that I wanted. And if you're going to use this technique, it helps if your dowels are a little bit longer than you need or are going to use eventually, and then you can cut them off to the right length afterwards. But grinding each one of these down takes about a minute. And then you don't want to get them too sharp, too pointy. This one, you can see it right there. You get it too pencil looking, and just grind the tip off to make it a little more naturally pointed at the top. So once you get those ground down, go ahead and paint them. I have tried staining these in the past, and I actually don't like how the stain takes the sanded dowels. So I end up painting them. And when you paint them, use a vertical streak going up and down the trunks, and that will help with the look of bark. Then go ahead and drill a small hole in the bottom of these. And I just use my little hand drill here. Doesn't really take very long to do. And then once you get that done, go ahead and get one of these little nails, and you'll have to cut the head off. And so get a good pair of wire cutters and snap the head off, and make sure you snap it off into a small container or your palm or something, so that the little brass head or metal head doesn't go flying off somewhere. So, and then insert the end you cut off into the hole, so it leaves you a nice sharp spike coming out the bottom of your tree. And so that'll fit quite nicely down into either plaster or foam, just like that. And then we'll go ahead and do the second one here. And then, so there you go, there's 2 tree trunks all set. Now we will go ahead and make the branch material for that. What you do is take the fibrous material and cut off anywhere from a 3x3 square to a 6x6 square, depending on how big you want the branches at the bottom of the tree trunk to be. And this doesn't have to be perfect, you can just sort of eyeball it and get it to something. Alright, so you can see for my 2 trees, I cut one off. Now the back of this particular one's got this sort of grid mesh on it, and you don't want that on there, so just go ahead and peel that off and discard that. There we go, we'll throw that away. Now you're going to want to take each one of these squares and cut them in half on a diagonal, which will leave you with 2 triangles. Pretty simple to do. And then if you're making smaller trees or ones with smaller diameter, you can go ahead and cut this triangle in half again as well. But generally I find that when you're ripping these up, the material rips into smaller pieces quite easily on its own. And so I actually start with the larger triangles, and then I end up with both large and small pieces to build the armatures for the branch. And so you can see when you start ripping off a layer, what you want to do is rip as thin a layer as possible off of this material. And then you'll end up with a couple pieces, and then you can just slide them onto your tree trunk down to wherever you want the bottom branches, and then go ahead and adhere them with some type of glue. In this case, I'm just using a clear Elmer's glue. You can use white Elmer's glue or matte medium or even scenic cement or something if you want, but just something to glue it in place. Go ahead and spin it around to get the glue evenly distributed amongst the branches. And then that's what the bottom layer will look like. And then you just continue to do this, ripping off very small, thin sections of this fibrous material. And you'll end up with anything from a triangle to sort of a square. And sometimes you get little small pieces like that. Again, and just set them aside. You'll use them when you get towards the top of the tree. Okay, and so here you can see there's a nice section. It's a little bit thick. We'll pull that apart. And sometimes you end up with odd ones that don't really look like anything, and there's not a real center section for it to fit down in. And so if that ever happens, you just rip it in half and then put the two pieces together and set them aside. Use that again later when it gets up towards the top. And there's no real science to how you're doing this. It's sort of just figuring it out as you go. You can't really do it wrong or right. If you end up with a real large section, you can put it, the tree trunk, right through the center of it to give you sort of a triangle shaped branch that's coming out. Or if you end up with smaller triangles, what you do is you actually put the point or the trunk on one tip of the triangle, and so have the triangle fanning out from the branch. And then that way when you go back and trim and shape the tree later, it gives you a lot more material to work with. And one of the things you want to avoid here is a very uniform, staggered, layered shape to the tree. You want to make sure it doesn't look like a shaped Christmas tree farm kind of evergreen. You want it to look like something that grew up in the wild all by itself. So here you can see with this one, I'll put it on one of the points to the triangle rather than in the center of the triangle, and slide it down. And then that'll help with the irregular shape and look of the tree. Alright, so you just continue to do that. Now I'm up near the top, so now I'm going back and using some of these smaller pieces that ended up ripping off as I was building up the lower branches. And you can see the whole tree is starting to, or does, look rather scraggly. And it's sort of supposed to look like that. You want there to be more branches and more things on your tree than what you're going to want or need later on. Because you're going to go back through and shape the tree a little bit after all these branches have dried in place and the glue's dry. You'll go back and give it a little bit of grooming. Again, you still want it to be irregular, but you want to get rid of some of these long wisps and things that just don't look right. But that's what it looks like. They only take about 5 minutes to put together. But that's what the armature branches to your evergreen tree will look like once you're done. And then you're going to go back through and, like I said, trim and cut these and shape these later on. Alright, so here's the second one. Went ahead and finished, and so here's what they both look like. Now these have been sitting here for a couple hours and they're dry, and so I'm going to go through and trim off all these long sort of pieces that are sticking out. And again, when you do this, there's no science to it. Just sort of cut where it looks like something doesn't look right. Just lob it off, but avoid a nice perfect triangle shape to your tree, because again, this isn't a groomed Christmas tree farm kind of evergreen. You want it to be actually a little less triangle shaped than what Christmas trees are, a little more conical with them. And so here's what the two look like. And once you get them all shaped, then you're going to apply the spray adhesive. And this is where the brown paper bags come in. You're going to want to use one of these for the spray adhesive and one of them for the ground foam. And make sure you use separate bags for each one. And with this, I recommend wearing rubber gloves or something like that so you don't coat your hand in the spray adhesive, because it is pretty sticky. and make sure you're spraying this into some type of confined thing like a bag or something, or a box, because it will get everywhere and it is very sticky and it will mess up your drains. And then go ahead and switch your bags out, and so that you'll be sprinkling this into a completely empty with no glue in it bag while you're shaking it over the tree. So, and then just gently sprinkle this on. Don't be super generous with it all at once. Just don't dump the whole thing into one section, because you'll end up with just sort of a blob. And what you do is you actually want the individual pieces of ground foam, which are the leaves or needles in this case, to be sticking to the branches individually and not in just one big giant clump. And so adding several thin layers of the leaves by sprinkling them a little bit at a time will help with that. And you don't have to go back and apply extra glue or anything, as long as you put it on thick enough to begin with. And when I spray glue on the trees, I do it till they almost start turning a little bit gray or white. You can see this one here, it almost looks a little grayish white on the branches, and that tells me when I've got enough glue on the thing for the leaves to nicely stick to them. And then again, we'll sprinkle this onto the second tree. And then here's the important part, and why you want to use two bags, is capture all of the excess ground foam that fell into the bag. And since there's nothing else in that bag and there's no glue or anything, you can just pour it right back into your container, and then you'll reuse that on your next set of trees. So here's what they look like. Okay, and you can vary the type of ground foam, whether you use coarse or medium, and vary the color some depending upon the type of evergreen tree you want to make, whether you're making a Scotch pine or a blue spruce. Will give you different, or you might want to use different ground foam depending on what you want to emulate. But I hope you like the technique. I think it's pretty easy and gives pretty good results. Alright, so that's it for this update. Pretty simple technique there. I'm confident that every single one of you out there can make trees that look like that if you want to. So with that, we'll wrap things up. Keep running your trains, keep enjoying them, and I'm going to get back to rail fan on the drawing line. Catch you at the next update.